Welcome back, Red Spotters. Here on Afterdark, I'm Alexis, and as you can see, I'm joined by practically no one. Yes, it seemed everybody had the week off, and it's just me, for the first time, doing a solo Afterdark on the film called Ad Astra, which stars Brad Pitt, Tommy Lee Jones, Donald Sutherland, Ruth Negga, and other people that are not really that important. So I'm just walking out of this movie right now, and I will give you my first initial impressions of the film right now, and then maybe I'll dive into some spoilers. Although this film isn't what I would consider anyway to be that spoiler-y to even talk about. So Ad Astra is a father-son story about Tommy Lee Jones, who plays Brad Pitt's father here, and the entire film is focused around Brad Pitt being sent on a mission to go find his father because the particular space station that he is at is causing these surges throughout the entire galaxy, and of course that threatens Earth. Now, accompanying this story is, this is not exactly what I would call a heartwarming film. In fact, one of the words that I use to describe it to somebody right now would be that it would leave you a bit cold, and that would be in the nature of the relationship between the father and the son here. And that essentially is what this movie is all about, really. There's not what I would think, anyway, to be what I would call much sci-fi intrigue. There are some interesting things, and practically for me, the most interesting things about this film happen in the periphery. They're off in the sides, which I'll get to in the spoilers. But as far as what this film is primarily concerned with, it is Brad Pitt and his character. And basically the struggle is not just finding his father, but the twist of it in this film is that there is a tussle, if you will. There is a conflict in which neither the father or the son really care much for each other. Tommy Lee Jones was, from what the film sells, long dead. And now all of a sudden they feel as if he's alive somewhere as to why he is sent out to go find him. And overall, I would say that it's a good film. But I guess just looking at my feelings right now, I think based on what is sold in the trailer, it is practically that and not much more. So I wouldn't necessarily think that this film has anything new to say or anything new really to offer than what we've already seen before. I know every year Peter and I talk about how there's like the space movie of the year, whether it be Gravity or Interstellar or The Martian or First Man. And after a while, these films do kind of start to feel a little bit of the same. They're not the same films by any means. They have their different stories, mind you. But it kind of makes it harder to really complement what this film does because of what you've already seen before. And what is good in this film is legitimately good on its own. It's a visually stunning film. To see it on a big screen is obviously a must. It's a space movie. Space always looks grand and scary. But what I did like about this in the movie, which is different from many of the other films that I just mentioned, is this portrays a near future in human civilization in which we have colonized the moon and Mars. There are two different sets of colonies that live on there, and it is sci-fi to that extent, because obviously it's not as if we can do that right now. But a lot of it does feel as if it's closer to where we are as a society right now. And you'll know it when you see it. There are a lot of really interesting conflicts that are alluded to in the movie. And I guess this is where I get into spoilers a little bit here, if you care about that. And that would be when it comes to different mining colonies that are at war with each other on the moon. There is a scuffle that happens while trying to get Brad Pitt to the rocket that'll take him to Mars. There is a little action scene in which pirates attack Brad Pitt. And That's pointing to something that's really interesting, but it's just kind of there. One particular aspect of this that I may not know, may not be aware of, it wasn't necessarily made clear in the film as to why, nor is it a critique of it, but I just found it particularly interesting that practically every single astronaut, which they're scientists, seem to have a deep faith in God, and I'm not sure if it's most alluded to a Christianity kind of God, but it's not really made clear. But you have these scientists who are doing their job, or these astronauts, mind you, that are doing their job, and some that are seeking for life, other intelligent life that is just human science or human biology. But you see it several times in the film when someone dies, that they're kind of given a burial of sorts, but with prayer. And to me, anyway, it was implied that it is faith-based, but it's as if they themselves actually believe it, which is not necessarily common when we're talking about science fiction, especially science fiction in space. So that's what I found really, really fascinating about that, but not really something that is part of the main story, so it's not really delved into or at all explored. Again, the scenery is fantastic. The score is beautiful. The cinematography, great. The acting all around is terrific. And Brad Pitt, obviously here, once again, doing a great job. Although, what's interesting about this performance is, as many of these films can do, it is insular in a way in which he is pretty much kind of like a one-man show in a sense. He's carrying the whole film, with him being integral, obviously, to the story of the father. But what the film uses as a technique is how he is thinking out loud, in a sense, or we, as an audience, get to have an inside seat, basically, into what his thoughts are, to what is transpiring, in addition to, obviously, the standard dialogue that happens in the film. So I thought that was interesting, and you do get what I would think maybe, anyway, a really deep look into the psyche of Brad Pitt's character here. So I thought that was nice. And it was a great performance. But on the whole, I struggle to really see what about it was so special in terms of the critical acclaim that is being bestowed upon him right now. It is a very good performance. Don't get me wrong. But it's not something I would consider award worthy. If anything these days is award worthy, which that's a whole different rabbit hole to begin with. And the film really commits to the whole father-son storyline. And this is a bit of a spoiler here. What's about it is that when I said that it's cold and it's not heartwarming, it's because it's a bit of an unrequited love affair in which the father cares not for the family that he left behind. And this entire film, Brad Pitt is kind of on this kind of reason to continue going on when he practically knows why, or he knows that his father cares not for him. And he, I guess, is trying to make up his mind whether or not he does care for his father in the end. It's one of those films in which the dad was absent, the son was damaged by it, he goes to see the father, they have a final reconciliation of sorts. That's the film. And then, not to knock on the story or the performances or what the film is about, good. And I guess this is a good film. Do not get me wrong here. But it's going to be hard, I think, for me to care about this movie or to even remember it after a few days. Because I can't point to a single thing about it that was remarkable or special or memorable. And I guess that may sound like a bit of some harsh criticism right there, but that's just how I'm feeling about it. And it kind of was what I thought I would feel, is where I can say it's a good film. They're good actors, really good performances, and technically speaking, it's done very well. But nothing about it, on the surface anyway, is kind of grabbing me. And while I do want to say I was interested, I was never at any point bored, which in some of these films, it can get a little boring. I liked First Man, which came out last year, which the Neil Armstrong film that came out last year with Gosling. And on the whole, but there were large parts in between where I kind of was just snoozing a little bit, not to be too harsh about it. But while I was interested to see where this was going, I kind of was disappointed where it ended up being, and at no point was I taken aback or, I guess, surprised by whatever twist happened here or what have you. Nor was I surprised with what I guess the revelation was about what this film was about, because it just seemed pretty clear to me that this film had already telegraphed what the movie was going to be about. But, yeah. Not overly taken with the film, as you can see. I enjoyed it for what it was, but it's not something that I'm going to be thinking about maybe after I finish talking about it on this review. So those are my thoughts on Ad Astra. We will have, I would say, a review on the channel. If anybody else sees it, I'll be sure to say my thoughts again on the Red Spotlight podcast, which drops every single Sunday and sometimes during the week on anywhere you listen to podcasts, whether it be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Wooshka, what have you, wherever you listen to podcasts. And of course, on this channel, on the Red Spotlight YouTube channel, look out for more After Darks. Right now we have someone on It Chapter 2 and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Thank you so much for listening to the review, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.